In October 2022, a comprehensive action was taken by the United States government that had far-reaching implications for China's advanced semiconductor industries. The Biden administration announced export controls to restrict sales of advanced semiconductors to China. These restrictions were strategically designed to limit China's acquisition of specific high-end semiconductor devices with potential military utility, impede its progress in supercomputer development and upkeep, and curtail its capacity to produce advanced semiconductor devices. Consequently, these measures effectively bar China's access to cutting-edge computer chips, as well as the essential software and equipment necessary for their fabrication. Subsequently, in March 2023, in response to the U.S. request, the governments of Japan and the Netherlands responded by publicly expressing their intent to impose licensing prerequisites on the export of advanced semiconductor manufacturing equipment. Japan and Netherlands followed U.S. lead and banned advanced microchips and manufacturing equipment sales to China. This indicates that the United States aims not only to constrict the supply of advanced microchips to China, but also to ensure that China remains devoid of the means to manufacture these chips. And this is how China launches counterattacks. First, China bans Micron chips. Following the commencement of an investigation into cybersecurity concerns in early April, China has instituted restrictions on the sale of certain Micron products. This move is a direct response to the export controls imposed by the United States. In the preceding year, the United States included Yangtze Memory Technologies Corporation, a China state-backed memory chip manufacturer, on its entity list, thereby prohibiting the supply of its products by U.S. companies without explicit authorization. Additionally, the U.S. imposed limitations on the export of NVIDIA's cutting-edge GPU, the H100, designed for advanced generative AI training. Micron, which established its inaugural factory in China 16 years ago, specializes in the production of computer memory and data storage solutions such as dynamic random access memory, DRAM, and flash memory. Notably, China represents its third-largest market, contributing 10.7% of its total annual revenue in 2022. The ramifications of this ban could potentially favor Micron's competitors within China, specifically the prominent South Korean firms Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. Nonetheless, the United States has also cautioned South Korea against filling the void in China's memory chip market should Micron face restrictions. Micron's earnings from mainland China and Hong Kong-based enterprises, encompassing both direct sales and indirect transactions through distributors, comprise approximately one-fourth of its overall revenue, which reached $30.8 billion in 2022. Micron estimates that nearly half of its customer revenue originating from its China headquarters, equivalent to a low double-digit percentage of its global revenue, now faces a degree of uncertainty. The arithmetic indicates that a quarter of $30.8 billion amounts to $7.7 billion, and half of that is approximately $3.85 billion. The company acknowledges that the determination made by the Chinese regulatory authority remains unsettled and fluid. Second, China implements export restrictions on gallium and germanium. In the ongoing semiconductor exports conflict, China has entered the fray by imposing limitations on the export of two crucial raw materials integral to a wide array of technical applications, including semiconductors and other advanced technologies, gallium and germanium. Consequently, the global supply chain is already grappling with the repercussions of this strategic geopolitical move. Gallium and germanium represent fundamental chemical elements employed in the manufacturing of semiconductors. Gallium, especially in the forms of gallium arsenide and gallium nitride compounds, finds its primary utility in optoelectronics, including light-emitting diodes, LEDs, laser diodes, solar cells, and high-frequency transistors. Germanium, having once been a pioneering material in semiconductor production before the extensive utilization of silicon, shares properties akin to silicon and plays a role in the creation of transistors, diodes, and other electronic components. Both elements boast distinctive attributes that confer invaluable characteristics to the production of high-performance semiconductors. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce has announced the imposition of a licensing framework on these materials due to national security considerations. This implies that the export of these materials will now be under government control, presenting challenges for Western companies in maintaining a consistent supply. The constrained availability of these materials could potentially result in supply shortages. Companies heavily reliant on Chinese suppliers may encounter obstacles in securing alternative sources, ultimately leading to production delays and increased expenditures. The United States has blacklisted numerous Chinese companies to deny them access to U.S. chips and cutting-edge technologies, which are deemed potential threats to national security. Gallium and germanium now serve as China's tools in the latest development of this intensifying chip battle. Chinese state media characterize the export restrictions on these rare metals as a cautionary warning to the U.S. China holds a commanding share, producing 60% of the world's germanium and 80% of gallium. In 2022, the leading importers of Chinese gallium products were Japan, Germany, and the Netherlands. As for germanium products, Japan, France, Germany, and the US stood as the primary importers. Firms dependent on these minerals for semiconductors and electric vehicles are racing to secure their supplies amidst mounting concerns of potential shortages. The automotive industry, in particular, is apprehensive due to recent developments, having only just begun recovering from a pandemic-induced global semiconductor shortage that led automakers to halt production of certain models and, in some cases, leave unfinished vehicles awaiting a single chip. Even defense industries have not been spared. The Pentagon recently disclosed steps taken to bolster domestic mining and processing of germanium and gallium, particularly gallium, as the U.S. possesses no reserves of this crucial element. And right now, China is mass-producing legacy chips. Following the ban on Micron and the imposition of export controls on gallium and germanium, China is currently expediting the production of older generation semiconductors and deliberating on strategies to manage its expanding influence. This course of action has raised concerns among U.S. and European officials. President Joe Biden implemented comprehensive controls to limit China's access to advanced chips that drive artificial intelligence models and military applications. However, Beijing responded by directing substantial investments towards the creation of factories producing so-called legacy chips that have not been subject to bans. These legacy chips remain indispensable across the global economy, serving as critical components for a wide range of products, including smartphones, electric vehicles, and military hardware. This has ignited fresh apprehensions about China's potential sway and has prompted discussions about further regulating the country's activities. The forefront of semiconductor technology features chips created through the most advanced etching processes, with state-of-the-art technology currently reaching 3 nanometers. On the other hand, legacy chips are generally characterized as those manufactured with 28 nanometer equipment or higher, technology that was introduced over a decade ago. Prominent officials from the EU and the US are expressing concerns about Beijing's endeavors to dominate the legacy chip market, driven by both economic and security considerations. There is apprehension that Chinese companies might flood global markets with their legacy chips in the future, potentially undermining foreign competitors, similar to what occurred in the solar industry. This could potentially lead to Western companies becoming reliant on China for these critical semiconductors. The importance of legacy chips was underscored by supply disruptions that disrupted companies during the peak of the pandemic, impacting entities like Apple and automobile manufacturers. The shortage of chips resulted in hundreds of billions of dollars in lost sales for businesses. Basic components such as power management circuits are vital for products like smartphones, electric vehicles, and even military equipment like missiles and radar systems. Efforts are being made in the US and Europe to bolster domestic chip production in order to reduce dependence on Asian sources. However, US chip producers may hesitate to invest in facilities that would need to compete with heavily subsidized Chinese plants. The Biden administration and its allies are gauging the willingness of Western companies to invest in such endeavors before determining the appropriate course of action. While the US regulations introduced in October of the previous year slowed down China's advancement in advanced chip manufacturing, they did not significantly impede China's capacity to employ technologies older than 14 nanometers. Consequently, Chinese firms have been constructing new manufacturing plants at a faster rate than anywhere else in the world. Projections indicate that by 2026, they will establish 26 fabrication facilities utilizing 200mm and 300mm wafers, surpassing the 16 facilities anticipated for the Americas. Over time, both China and the US chip makers have been impacted by the chip war. Big global chip companies reported losing money in the first part of 2023, and these losses continued into the next months for most of them. These losses happened mainly because people didn't want as many chips. After all, the world economy was slowing down, and the US restricted how many chips it could sell to China, which is the world's biggest market for these tiny computer parts. These losses that they caused themselves are putting more pressure on the Biden government. But what's even more important is that China is making more of its own chips, so it doesn't have to rely on getting as many chips from the US as it used to. This is different from what the US thought would happen. In the first 4 months of this year, China made a lot more chips, about 39.2 billion more, and at the same time, China bought $36.3 billion less in chips from other countries. China making more of the older style chips will change its own chip market and also make it more important in the world's chip-making process. When we talk about these older chips that many industries need, China's ability to make lots of things quickly and at lower costs might become a big advantage. And this is how the US sanctions have backfired. Rather than slowing China's progress in the tech industry, the US has made China become self-reliant and less dependent on other countries for semiconductors. So, how do you think the chip war will end? Share your thoughts and leave your comments below. If you like what you watch, hit the like button to show your support. More importantly, subscribe to this channel so that you will receive more interesting videos about the happenings in Asia.